were the most distrusted and disliked candidates in recorded history. So to try to excuse my votes as being stolen from Hillary is outrageous. But beyond that, we have data. We actually have scientific data on how people voted. And what we know is that the people who voted for me, in vast majority, over 60%, would not have voted if I wasn't there. And of the remainder who would vote, many of them would have gone to Donald Trump. So just asserting that those votes belong to Hillary is just another sign of the arrogance of the Democratic establishment, which is really working overtime here to silence its opposition. And if you look at the smear campaign that's actually been conducted against me about being a Russian tool, when did that get started? Remember, my trip based on foreign policy, on a peace offensive, on addressing nuclear weapons and the climate crisis.
You were speaking against the war, yep, while you were there.
Absolutely, and trying to promote nuclear disarmament and really substantive climate emergency action, talking not only to Russian media and officials, but on that same trip I spoke to the deputy lead negotiator for China at the climate talks. I spoke with Jeremy Corbyn, the head of the Labour Party in the UK. So these are really critical issues, and I'd say what's wrong with our elected officials that this is not on their agenda.
Very important issues. We've discussed them before on this broadcast, but do you think,
to your
Doctor,
credit, absolutely,
that by being there, perhaps did your presence there maybe, you know, uptick their concept of interfering using you?
Well, in fact, my presence there was not covered here in the United States whatsoever. So it wasn't until it became a scam, basically, a smear campaign against me. And it speaks volumes about when did that happen, because we were public. There were no backroom meetings going on here. This was all being announced in my press releases, on our website, in our emails.
But they became aware of you.
There was no secrets.
They saw that you had a very
cared.
active campaign. They were like, Dr. Jill Stein, this is another presidential candidate.
Well, they did not, put it this way, they did not assist me in any way. So that's all well and good. You know, there's an effort being made here to try to denigrate political resistance and the opposition which is growing. And fundamentally, that's what's going on here, is that you have two political parties that are scared stiff of their opposition because they saw a revolt, both of them. And, people who were voting for Trump were not for Trump. We have polls that show that as well. They were fundamentally voting against their experience of the past 8 years, against the neoliberal policies that have offshored our jobs, that have basically undermined our wages, and which have really caused a crisis, a generation that's mired in debt right now, of young people who can't get out of college debt. So there's a revolt going on, and the smear campaign was launched against me not when I went on my European trip, not whatsoever. It was the week that I received the nomination. Then all of a sudden this smear campaign was launched with all of the coordination that we're accusing Russia of. You know, it goes on here as well. Hillary Clinton also has her troll army to the tune of $6 million a year, in fact, is their budget. So it's going on both sides of the fence here.
That does not necessarily reflect an outside, a foreign entity coming and influencing this troll army you're referencing. But my final question to you is, do you concede anything, even a single vote, that maybe have come in your favor as a result of Russian influence?
I think the question is here, really, are the Americans in revolt? And there's no doubt that Americans are in revolt. Remember, 75% of Americans were screaming for open debates because they didn't like what they were given. So for the Democrats here to be leading the charge, to say, oh, this was just the Russians, it's like they're saying that Black Lives Matter is Russian influence. Or back at the time of the Civil Rights Movement, that was being denigrated as just a communist ploy. So this is, unfortunately, what an insecure power structure does in order to try to silence us. And it's very important that we stand up and not allow this to be a pretext for censorship.